It's very peculiar how one can find themselves atop a stage that they never prepared to be the centre of attention. That is sadly where Dr. Alain Woodloe found himself not too long ago. After the rebellion, things were hard for creatures all around. These wonderful mythical creatures, each grown from different animals, different people. Before, the humans looked down upon them, and now they practically spit in their faces. The rebellion took place where there was unfair treatment towards these creatures. They rallied and they fought, but the humans were just superior. The humans had weapons they did not have, and so the fight ended quickly. Dr. Alain Woodloe saw a lot of horrors of the rebellion because he was a doctor. He had to stitch up every fallen one, and he had to watch them fall again and again for just cause. And when the war did end, they didn't even get to say goodbye to their loved ones. No burial, no talk, nothing. But a few days, a few years, Dr. Alain Woodloe didn't know. He didn't really keep track of such a thing. After all, he just counted his patients. 1, 2. Hello, Miss Jane. You're back again with knee problems. And so he continued onwards and onwards, knowing that the segregation was getting worse and worse. The treatment of creatures was getting worse and worse. Soon it went from 1 or 2 creatures in his hospital to 10, 20, 30. Soon he had to note down all the names that had to come in, and of course he had to talk with them and know their insurance wouldn't cover what happened, because at the end of the day, the humans were always right. The humans were always in the right. It tortured the man to know that even he was a puppet to those above, that he wasn't truly there to help them. And then they renovated the hospital. Renovated. He laughed at that word, because it wasn't a renovation. It was a way for them to get more money, purge them more, because they knew the staff was lying on the costs, knew the staff was lying on how many came to them, because they knew if they knew how many were treated there, if they knew how much the costs were, they knew they would get taxed to all hell. And so the creatures were transferred to a horrible hospital. But Dr. Alain Woodloe couldn't follow them. No, he was put on break. Again he laughed at such a word, break. It wasn't a break. It was a way to fire him, but without telling him that he was fired. And so he had to look somewhere else. He had to look for new work, because there wasn't a way he could survive in his neighbourhood if he didn't work. He knew that all the nurses, all the doctors, they would have to get lower paid jobs, because being a doctor, that was the highest paid job you could get as a creature, and even then, rarely any creatures got through. He remembered the headaches with his human colleagues, always complaining that they were at a downgraded hospital, that they deserved better than to be serving them. But anyway, that's beside the point. And so he went. He went to look for work. Someone must need his medical knowledge. And And what turns out, it did. He heard of them through the news. They had been causing right controversy. Cole Enox was the head of Enox Labs. And the thing that caused controversy, caused talks throughout the town, is that Cole Enox, being a human, you'd think that the creatures would only be getting janitor jobs. But no. There were two working on robotics in his lab, and he was looking for an assistant. But there was one thing that caused the human to uproar. Cole Enox would not allow a human to be his assistant. He downright scowled at the idea. And so, Dr. Alain Woodloe decided maybe he could try there. Soon he was integrated, and soon he found that they were like a family. As Cole's adopted sister Roxy was a lizard creature with her tail swishing and a loving family at home. He found that Mike was an ant creature of all things, very rare, and he hated the fact that he was censored because he could not speak the language of humans. And then there was Alex, an octopus creature, needing water maintenance constantly, and yet all of them coexisted happily with Cole, a human that tried everything he could to make things better for creatures. But that meant one thing with the labs, one thing that Cole told him from day one. He needed to be perfect. Alan didn't really know what he meant by that. He needed to be perfect. Did he mean that during his work he would not allow mistakes? No. Roxy explained it better later. Whenever humans came and inspected them, whenever they went to meetings with higher-ups, they couldn't do a single thing that could charge them with abuse. They couldn't bump into any humans. They couldn't do a thing. Now, he wondered why. He wondered if maybe Cole wasn't the creature activist that everyone thought he was. But soon he found out that it wasn't the case. Cole had to be stricter with them in front of humans because he knew if they made a mistake and he didn't take direct action, that they would do anything to close his labs. And if the labs closed, well, he couldn't help the creatures anymore. He worked for the greater good. Alan stayed by his side and watched how this confident man was not all he cracked up to be. Cole had problems, lots of problems that he tried his hardest to help. Because the man thought of everyone besides himself. You might think it was selfless at first, but this went into dangerous territories quickly. Alan could see that his health was not where it was supposed to be, that he drove himself to sickness often because of how much he worked. And so later on, he found that there was a few underlying mental issues as well. So he found himself at centre stage, in the spotlight, because if Cole fell, they would all fall with him. The creatures needed Cole, needed him to continue his work, continue helping creatures with donations and charity and medicines that shook the creature world. They really, truly needed him. And so Alan became close friends and wanted to do everything he could to make sure that Cole lived through it all. There were very hard moments for Alan, very difficult moments, because Cole would break down. Sometimes he just couldn't see the light. And each and every time, Alan was there. Alan was there to pick him up and help him move forward. For if Cole could not walk on, he would carry him. Oddly enough, this grew into a very close and weird friendship. Because even though he was the one taking care of Cole, sometimes it wasn't just him selfishly doing things. Sometimes he would move forward, he would see himself get sick, but want to be there for Cole. And Cole would tell him to get back, to rest, and would stay with him even though he was not obligated. He gave him meals, made sure that at least Alan was still working. So they took care of each other. They were each other's pillars in the end. And Alan loved the friendship he got, even though it was through bad circumstances. Alan likes to think of himself as selfless, but he knows he has selfish tendencies. He does, he knows it. It was very hard working at the labs. He longed to go back to his practice, and so he suggested to Cole that from time to time he could do doctor visits, little house visits to those who did not have the way to pay for the human's cost to be in the hospital. And of course Cole agreed, and he even suggested to go with him. It was an amazing feat. Cole loved watching all of them. He liked getting close to each creature. But Alan still soon found out that his thought process was as broken as the humans. But whereas the humans thought themselves as superior, Cole thought as creatures as superior. And Cole wanted it so that there just were no humans anymore. And so Alan chatted to him, because he knew that thinking was what brought them to this situation, brought them to the segregation. Would they be any better if they decided that humans were inferior? No. Then it would just lead to the same treatment as creatures, even worse. Alan was tagged from birth. He would wish it upon no one to be tagged like that, to know that they're tracking you each and every day. But he knew others had it worse. Mike, for example, couldn't speak freely. Every single word was censored through the translator. He knew that there were creatures of his own kind, the flight birds that had their wings clipped. He would never wish that upon anyone. He would never wish the treatment that the creatures received, that treatment on anyone. And so he disagreed with Cole on that point. He disagreed that it would be better if creatures were in charge. He dreams of a day where everything is equal, where creatures can get jobs that are quote-unquote high-paying, where they can be office workers, where they're not tracked every minute of every day of every night, where they're not raided randomly, where seeing a human beat down on a creature wasn't a common sight, and that the human could get in trouble. Alan just wanted a simpler world. Alan just wanted a world where he didn't have to turn a blind eye to people suffering. And he guessed in a way that working at Enoch's lab was a step in the right direction. They were paid equally. They were paid for the work they had done without any cuts. They were given a chance. But for that chance, they had to be perfect. Alan thinks that things need to go forward, need to move forward. But of course, with Kra bringing violence to the humans for creatures' rights, that isn't the way to go. Violence is not the way forward in Alan's eyes. The rebellion showed that is not the way forward. But they needed to do something. Protests needed to come more. They needed to continue moving forwards, continue helping. And maybe one day, everything could be equal. Alan wished that every night. He hoped and prayed that one day that would come. That's all he could do. Hope, dream. As he lay down in his bed. As he got up in the morning, he could hope and dream some more. As he fed his cat. As he played around and then went off to work. He just had to hope that maybe Cole could change something. That maybe this creature lab, if it gains success, maybe they'll try and give creatures more of a chance. He knew he was asking a lot of humans to think of themselves as superior, but he really did believe that he was doing something for the betterment, for the better treatment of creatures. He hoped and prayed, and if that day never came, he would give his job up for another creature that was finding it hard to feed their family from the pitiful wage that the humans gave. He would happily put it aside for someone that needed the help, that needed a good paying job. Each and every one of them has their own little stories, have their own little thoughts. But all of them wish for one thing, wish for betterment, wish for a better world. And can you fault them? Can you fault them truly? All that is left is hopes and dreams. He knows that there needs to be more done for it to come into reality, but he knows everything starts with a dream, everything starts with a hope, and if they all rally together, Alan is sure, Alan is positive that they can do something in this world and they can make it a better place. He wants to do it for the future generations. He knows his generation is already over, that nothing will change for him. But he hopes that in the future, for the little ones that are now here, that for them, they're waiting for a better future, and not a future of picking up after humans and their ancestors. He hopes and prays for them, because at the end of the day, he doesn't care what happens to him, what happens to them. It's much, much more important. This is Mystery Redactive, aka Red, telling you about Alain Woodloe's story.